What's up, RotoBallers? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jorden Hill. Hopefully, your fantasy team is chilling with a 1-0 record, but even if you took the L in week 1, it's time to move on and get those fantasy lineups set for week 2. Today, we're going to be taking a look at RotoBaller's consensus positional rankings for Sunday and Monday's games, and highlighting a few players along the way that have a particularly good or bad matchup. Starting at the quarterback position, you'll notice some of the usual suspects towards the top, but let's take a look at Tua Tagovailoa at number 10. Tua was amazing for your fantasy team if you started him in week 1, but we kind of expected this to be a high-scoring affair against the Chargers. This week, however, Miami will have to take on the Patriots in Foxborough, and New England did a really good job limiting Jalen Hurts and the Eagles' offense in week 1. Now, Tua is always going to offer you a really high ceiling as long as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are active, so for that reason alone, he should probably stay locked into your starting lineup, but maybe don't expect the 30-plus fantasy point outpouring that you got in week 1. Moving up just one spot to number 9, you might be wondering how Daniel Jones even finds himself on this list after the Giants got smacked by the Cowboys last week. But look, all signs point to a get-right game against the Cardinals. Dallas probably has the best defense in the entire league. Arizona, not so much. They gave up a lot of production to fantasy quarterbacks last season. If you didn't rage drop Jones after his poor performance in week 1, we think he's a good start as a bounce back candidate in week 2. Next, let's take a look at Anthony Richardson. The rookie comes in at number 6 after a really solid debut against Jacksonville. This week, he'll take on another divisional opponent in the Houston Texans, who on paper have been pretty good against fantasy quarterbacks in recent years. But is this really because they have a good pass defense, or just because they've been carved up so much on the ground? We think it's the latter, and even if Indianapolis gets Zach Moss back this week, without Jonathan Taylor there, Anthony Richardson is going to have to lead the way. Moving over to running backs, there's only one name that wasn't here in week 1, and that's Kenneth Walker, who comes in at number 11. Going into the season, we weren't sure what the split was going to look like between Walker and rookie Zach Charbonnet, but Walker saw 63% of Seattle's offensive snaps, handled 12 carries, and got 5 targets, compared to Zach Charbonnet's 3 total touches. And keep in mind, this was against the Rams, who they trailed for almost the entirety of the second half. We think the Seahawks offense can return to form against the Lions this week. Detroit allowed the 4th most rushing yards in the league last season, so Walker projects to be a top 12 option. Going up a few spots to number 8, I'm going to highlight a player that I talked about last week. Travis Etienne's utilization in week 1 was even better than we expected. He was given 80% of the snaps, and he made the most of his 23 opportunities. This week, he gets to face the Kansas City Chiefs in a matchup that has the highest projected point total of the week, so Etienne should continue to smash. Fresh off of a dominant 2022, Austin Eckler picked up right where he left off in week 1, but as you can see, we have him ranked at just number 5 for week 2. Eckler's currently nursing an ankle injury and is listed as questionable, and on top of that, he faces a stout Tennessee run defense. It goes without saying that if Eckler is active, you have to start him in all formats, but monitor the situation because if Eckler can't go for whatever reason, Joshua Kelly becomes a viable option. At wide receiver, cracking our top 12 is Brandon Ayuk, who scored as the wide receiver 2 last week with 2 touchdowns. The 49ers will face the Rams this week, and although LA's defense looked pretty good against Seattle, this may have just been a fluke. They allowed a lot of production to wide receivers last season. Either way, this San Francisco offense looks unstoppable, and Ayuk seems to be the favorite target of Brock Purdy, so it's wheels up from here on out. You'll notice that CeeDee Lamb is a little bit lower in our rankings this week. The Cowboys will take on the Jets in what should be the battle of the NFL's 2 best defenses. A hyper-targeted Stephon Diggs was able to get it done on Monday night against the Jets, but we're definitely worried about Dak Prescott and this Cowboys passing attack against New York. If you have Lamb, keep him in your lineup, but maybe don't expect a big day in what projects to be a really low-scoring affair. Moving all the way up to number 3, let's talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Sun God got off to a really solid start against Kansas City in week 1, and he has the privilege of facing the Seattle Seahawks defense in week 2, who just allowed huge performances to Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. St. Brown's target share is about as safe as it gets, and considering the matchup, don't be shocked if he finishes as the top receiver on the week. Speaking of St. Brown, let's take a look at his teammate, who seems to be a solid option at the tight end position moving forward. Of course, I'm talking about Sam Laporta, who comes in at number 11 in our week 2 rankings. Laporta started his career by playing on 83% of snaps and securing all 5 of his targets, and Seattle has been a plus matchup for tight ends throughout the past few years. At number 8, we have Hunter Henry. We didn't know who the top dog would be in this New England passing offense, and sure, Kendrick Bourne had a big week 1, but Hunter Henry was the tight end 1 overall in the week. In week 2, he'll face the Miami Dolphins, who allowed the second most points to fantasy tight ends last season and didn't get off to a great start against them in 2023. If you don't have one of the top tight ends, check your waiver wires for Henry. He might still be out there. You don't need me to tell you to start Travis Kelce when he's active, but he's back practicing in a limited fashion and reportedly pushed to play last week, so all signs point to him suiting up in week 2. It was evident how badly the Chiefs needed him in week 1, and Jacksonville represents a great matchup for him to return to. To quickly recap, we don't expect Tua Tagovailoa to find the same success against the Patriots that he found in week 1, but we do think Daniel Jones can bounce back in a big way against the Arizona Cardinals. Also, Anthony Richardson looks to be the real deal and should be a solid start against the Texans defense this week. At running back, Kenneth Walker is still the clear RB1 in Seattle and should be able to capitalize on a good matchup against Detroit. Travis Etienne got off to a great start in the season opener and will look to keep it rolling in a high-scoring affair against Kansas City, and keep an eye on Austin Eckler, who's dealing with an ankle injury and faces a really tough opponent in the Tennessee Titans. Brandon Ayuk has earned a spot in our top 12 receiver rankings after a huge showing in week 1, while CeeDee Lamb could struggle a bit against Sauce Gardner and the New York Jets. Amon-Ra St. Brown, on the other hand, is one of the top fantasy plays of the week and should dominate the Seattle Seahawks secondary. Rookie tight end Sam Laporta is quickly establishing himself as a focal point of the Lions' offense, and Hunter Henry could prove to be one of the biggest steals of the week 1 waiver wire. And finally, if you drafted Travis Kelce in the first round, you can breathe a sigh of relief because it looks like he's going to be back to face the Jaguars this week. That'll be all for our week 2 rankings. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe to RotoBaller for more awesome fantasy advice that'll help you win big in 2023. Thanks again for tuning in, and best of luck in your week 2 fantasy matchups.